Hey, review family, keep it high, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morse, review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. Welcome back to my series, I Want to Rant, the series in which I rant. I do no editing in these, I don't add in any things. These are usually just little videos that I kind of vent about certain things in the music industry or certain thoughts that I have, or I guess just opinions. So if that sounds like it's for you, then you can go ahead and check out a playlist that I have on my channel where I have all the episodes of I Want to Rant. So today I wanted to go over a little bit of a kind of kickback for my video about genre elitists, and this is more of a follow-up video, something that I have really been racking my brain for, something that I was thinking about directly after I made that video, and I wanted to make a bit of a follow-up for that video because there were some more things that I wanted to say, and particularly in this, I'm going to be tackling the issues about how genre elitism, specifically in some of the genres that I call home, is very detrimental to not only the art form that it is harming, to the people that really are listening to the music in the first place. Now, I'm going to be using this as an example, but I know that there's going to be some people that watch my videos that aren't into this, so I'm going to relate it to you guys as best as I can. Well, I listen to a ton of different types of music, and one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite genre, is heavy metal. I know it's my favorite genre, and I have been called out before, a couple times on this channel, a couple times on some YouTube comments, and I've seen countless other people called out for being posers or not listening to true metal or listening to true music because it's not what they consider or deem worthy to be their criteria of music. And I want to go over why I feel like this is harmful to the art form, and it is harmful to the artist, and it is harmful to the fan base. Heavy metal in and of itself is known for being unwelcoming for the most part. And a lot of people complain about certain genres and certain production standards being upped, like by today's standards, when it comes to a lot of the newer bands, when it comes to metalcore, when it comes to deathcore, when it comes to some melodic death metal. People complain that things are becoming more overly produced and more saturated, and there's more mundaneness, and yeah, that is true. But you gotta understand that I'm going to be tackling some of the arguments that people make when it comes to this genre, and I wanted to say that this isn't just for heavy metal. I'm sure this can apply to whatever genre you're thinking of. You're just gonna have to apply it to yourself. But the thing about heavy metal is, one of the main arguments is metal is not the same as it was back in the 1980s, the 1990s, and pretty much the early 2000s, but some people cut it off in the 90s. And a lot of the argument that is made is that a lot of the music can feel more kind of status quo, just trying to be safe, trying to be just fun, trying to be too poppy. And the people that complain about modern metal being too poppy are literally the most moronic people that I have ever had to deal with when it comes to speaking one-on-one with them, because you simply cannot reason with these people. What I mean by this is I listen to heavy metal of a lot of different genres. I listen to everything from early 80s death metal, I listen to some black metal, I listen to death grind, I listen to gore grind, I listen to grindcore, I listen to deathcore, I listen to metalcore, and specifically those two garner a lot of hate in the heavy metal community. People think that it is not true metal, that it is poser music, that if you're listening to that your credibility is different than theirs, and it is a counterintuitive argument by their standards, because by virtue of saying that you are a poser for listening to that type of music, you are putting yourself on a pedestal and acting like you have more merit. And these are the same people that will defend their bands to death and defend the genres that they care about to death over your genre, acting like they have more merit. Well, that's where a lot of the issue starts, because art in and of itself is subjective, and the people that say that certain music is not as artistic as their type of music is not an objective fact, because music, as is most art, has to do with emotion. At a base level, there can be shock, there can be awe, there can be a lot of different factors that go into creating music or art, whether it comes from a television series, a movie, a book, a game. It comes down to emotion. It comes down to telling some sort of story that you're wanting to convey. And I think that people have lost the meaning big time when it comes to the whole poser music culture. I have personally gotten hate a little bit on my channel in my earlier time, as well as on Reddit, as well as some YouTube comments, just for the fact that I enjoy metalcore and deathcore, as well as a ton of other genres. And that is something people get blind. People immediately say and put aside that you listen to a different type of music than they do, and they just basically say, because you listen to this type of music, you are not as good of a music listener as them. You don't have as much credibility. You don't have enough substance. And the people that say this, let me just take some random band for example. Let's say Suicide Silence or Chelsea Grin. They're deathcore bands. They're two of the premier deathcore bands, or a band like Whitechapel. You may not like a band like that. There are plenty of people that don't like a band like bands like that, or deathcore in general. That is perfectly fine. You don't have to. No one is shoving it down your throat and saying you have to enjoy that type of music unless you're just being a douchebag. Unless you are dealing with someone who's just inherently rude about their genre. See, you can get genre elitists that are in every single genre. A lot of people think that it's only one side. There are plenty of deathcore elitists, plenty of metalcore elitists. I'm not saying there isn't that, and I'm just trying to address both sides here one at a time. The thing about it is, I feel like with Chelsea Grin, Suicide Silence, Whitechapel, any other deathcore band you want to go by, The Faceless, Infinite Annihilator, Oceano, Born of Osiris, Veil of Maya, whatever deathcore band you want to go for. If you want to go for some metalcore like Killswitch Engage, As I Lay Dying, bands like that, you are going into it with this like motive of, I'm on a pedestal, I listen to music that is more important, therefore you are listening to lesser music, and they go into it with the thought that I'm going to hate this. And I have literally seen some reaction videos for certain bands that I enjoy that have literally just immediately, like within the first 10 or 15 seconds, showed a negative type of emotion. And I'm sorry to say, but if you are a true musical critic, if you are truly looking at it from a standpoint of just, oh, this is not the type of music that I want to listen to, therefore it has absolutely no talent or merit whatsoever, you're going to be able to understand that there's going to be music you don't like. I'm not saying you have to like every type of music. I'm just saying I don't like a lot of early black metal. I don't like Mayhem and Burzum and Bathory, but I'm not going to go out and attack people that like those bands and say that they're just talentless. They have no artistic merit to them. Their lyrics suck. They may in your mind. You may hate Bathory. You may hate Chelsea Grin. But at the same time, there's no separation between the two in terms of an objective standpoint. If you can, I am willing to hear out anyone in the comment section that can like put a comment down that is thoughtful, that says physically a good point as to why a certain genre or a certain band or a certain artist is better than another band or artist or genre, without bringing up how it makes you feel and how emotionally poignant it is to you, I'll shut up. It all comes down to how it makes you feel. There is no fine line where it's drawn where it has to be this way. I don't care what genre you're talking about. Let's just bring in literally the completely opposite side of the spectrum. Let's say something like K-pop. There is no line that's drawn where it says, okay, this is what this genre is supposed to be, and if it goes out of this boundary, then it is not good anymore. There is so many people that do that with heavy metal, and it pisses me off so much when it comes to people that take it to the extreme and act like, oh, everything else is just bad because I am more special, and they put the genre in a box. They say that it has to be a certain way, that it has to have this certain sound, that it has to have this type of lyric, that it has to have this type of texture. Maybe to you. Say maybe to you. If you can just come right out and say, I believe that this genre is the best genre because I believe that its lyrics have the best emotional resonance, and I believe that their vocals sound better than a lot of other genres, and in my opinion, the instrumentation appeals to me more than another genre. There's a lot of people that don't do that. I would not care. That's literally art if you do that. Just say that. Say that you enjoy this genre, band, or artist because you enjoy them. But don't go attacking the other side because they are not appealing to you and acting like the people that listen to that are Posers. God, I'm so tired of hearing that word. I have seen that word thrown around in so many comment sections, and it's disgusting. It's grotesque. It's unbelievably boring and mundane to the point. And the thing about this whole elitist culture, to the whole keeping metal alive culture, and that's where a lot of people, especially a lot of older metal listeners, and see, I want people to understand that I am not some core kid, or I'm not some scene kid, as a lot of people say, that just listen to metalcore and deathcore. Some of my favorite grindcore albums come from the 80s with bands like Napalm Death and Extreme Noise Terror. I love a ton of early black metal and death metal from the 80s. Bands like Death, bands like Cannibal Corpse, bands like Celtic Frost, bands like Venom. I mean, there are a ton of bands that, and even if I don't like some of them, I can see the appeal and I can see the kind of experimentation and how they brought it up. But the final argument that a lot of people give, that I'll say, there's so much I could tackle. I might make a part 2 at some point about this, but the other thing that you could say is how the production is, how things are overly produced, how they sound overly produced. Here's the issue with that. Here's where I feel like that is completely off the deep end wrong. The bands that you are saying should sound a certain way came about in the 80s. Some came in the late 70s, but most of the big movement came about in the 80s and went into the 90s. It was a gradual increase in production. Throughout the 80s, it started off very raw because that was all they were given for. It was a very underground media, and not only that, but the fan base enjoyed it sounding raw, and that was the aesthetic. As you went into the 90s, you had bands that were sprouting up in a lot of different subgenres, and the production was progressively getting better. In the 2000s, there was a lot more mainstream metal hitting the charts, and even in the 90s, there was a lot of bands that were kind of hitting it big, and even before that, when you had bands like AC/DC, you had bands like Metallica, you had bands like Pantera and Slayer and Anthrax and Testament, and all of these bands that were doing a great job of breaking out. And slowly but surely in the 2000s, more radio metal, as it's dubbed, came onto the charts. Bands like Linkin Park, bands like Five Finger Death Punch, bands like System of a Down, bands like Korn, and some of these came out in the 90s and kind of built their way up. But the production has progressively gotten better because of technology. People aren't trying to change a genre, and I swear to God, you guys are the reason that this genre has went on a decline over the years when it comes to new listeners. You shun people by acting this way for the pioneers of this new wave. And I can assure you that if the bands that you love in the 80s would have had the ability to record on better equipment with better production, if such a thing would have existed, it would have happened. They would have recorded in a different way. And the one thing that I actually got to add, and this is something a lot of people don't think of, you might hate metalcore, you might hate deathcore, you might think that they're poppy as hell, you might not like them at all. But a band like Killswitch Engage, a band like Suicide Silence, Whitechapel, Chelsea Grin, one of these bands, As I Lay Dying, who's to say that someone couldn't listen to that and then move on into bigger things, or go into the genres you like, or maybe experiment and go into their own genres, or look back in the past and look in the 80s and 90s and stuff, or the 70s, and listen to the type of music that you enjoy. By virtue of you looking at them and saying, you know what, that's not a good music, that's not what you should be listening to. And when you try to categorize everything into genres of, oh, this is this genre, this is that genre, this is that genre, and if you go into this genre, I'm going to call you a poser because that band is bad and you should be listening to this song or this album. You can recommend stuff without sounding like you're just being a rude person. And it honestly infuriates me to see how the culture has become with the whole elitist thing, and how people are acting like things don't change. If you just stay dormant and stagnant and keep stuff status quo and keep stuff the same over and over, it's going to eventually die off. That's how everything is. Look at so many genres of music that came about throughout the 1900s and to the 2000s, and how many genres, as many as you know, as many as you could name off the top of your head, there is probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, if not more, amounts of subgenres that didn't get the light of day, that didn't get the chance. And by virtue of you trying to pin down something and say it's supposed to be this way, you're enabling many people to not check it out in the first place. And as a result of that, bands will slowly start to not be able to make as much music because you got to get a paycheck. And if no one's listening, or if just a couple people are listening, it's not going to work out. So anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't hit that notification bell. I'll talk to you guys next time. Till then, my name is Jay Morse, Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.